steps, if you're trying to test a database, some of the key things that we've already sort of talked about, but I want to make sure that we lay these out in a little shorter sort of summary. You need to verify that the data and required relationships are correct. So again, the idea of if I save something, I want to be able to load it back and it be the same. What I save, I need to be able to get the same thing back in a load. We need to test the three key actions are creating, updating, and deleting data. So those need to be in our mind as we are testing, is what happens when I create a record, if that's feasible, if that's possible, what happens when I update a record, if that's possible, and what happens when I delete data, if that's possible. And deleting can be a little bit of a challenge because in some cases, it deletes and removes that data. In some cases, we just have some sort of a value, like a, is deleted flag that you have to check to see whether the data was technically deleted or not, or maybe like an active flag or something like that. So deleting may be actually removing the data, but it may also be just marking data accordingly. From a testing point of view, it doesn't matter too much other than you just need to know what does a deleted record look like, or I guess not look like if it doesn't exist. Once we run our tests, we need to be able to have some way to clean up so that we can, that we're not doing essentially damage to the data when we're doing our testing. And then the challenge that often is reproducing those tests is building our regression scripts. Sometimes we can do those within normal means, like maybe a web interface that we can use like a Selenium or something like that. Sometimes we're going to have to write code down at the whatever level it is, whether it's a C# app or Java app, or maybe even within the database itself. We may have some scripts that are run that essentially go through and, for example, in some cases, you have scripts that your test user IDs are known, you're consistent with those. And so there's a script that you can run after your test that goes out and finds everything that was touched by those user IDs and cleans it all up. It varies from situation to situation, but that's again where, it's a little bit extra challenge for the database to get those regression pieces done. It's not just regression against your test, but now I need to be able to do a regression of cleaning up. And again, I got to mention, if you can just do an image restore, so it's just back it up, run your test, and then restore the backup, that's like ideal. That's going to be the easiest way to ensure that you didn't miss something. Going through a whole bunch, we've had already some good questions and comments along the way, but now I want to open it up for anything else we've missed, questions, comments on this.
This might not be related to this topic here, but since I'm working with the database, the DBA, the database administrators, can they write SQL, or are they very good with development, or vice versa? Can the SQL developer be a DBA?
They can be sometimes, but it tends to, those two roles tend to be slightly different. Typically, a database developer, both of them are going to be able to write SQL, probably quite a bit of it. Database developers are more likely going to be able to work with saving and loading and updating data. DBAs are more about being able to create the structures, create a table. Sometimes they're the ones that really do the creation of triggers and constraints, where database developers may create stored procedures.
Okay.
DBAs often have more of the actual database engine configuration skills. So it's not just what's the logical database, how you interact with code, but the physical database of where does that live on what server is that on? How is that actually configured within the server and the storage? And so it's a little bit more of DBAs are a little bit more of a configuration type of job, whereas the database developers are more using the database as opposed to the DBA that's creating the database, if that helps clarify maybe a little bit.
Okay.
Other questions and comments?
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, cool. So we will move here. So what did we learn? Hopefully, ideally. One, and I think we knew that it's one of those things that, I don't know if we learned this. I think everybody sort of knows it at some level from the start. Database testing has got unique challenges. It is different from code. It's, as we've listed it out, it's not the same. So being able to test the database is a whole different level or style of testing. We're often going to need to learn about the requirements beyond just the records and the data. We've talked about all these relationships and constraints and triggers and permissions and all that kind of good stuff that we're going to have to make sure that the requirements are, cover those, that they are at that level of detail. If we can use images, stage images or testing or whatever you want to call them, of the database itself, database snapshots, if we can use those, they're going to be a lot easier for us to restore and then keep our fingerprints off of the database. In the world of cloud, it can be expensive, but sometimes that's a nice thing, is that it's easier to spin up, just like it is virtual machines. It's easier to spin up a replication of that database that you can go test, and then you can just drop it and delete it when you're done. There's a lot of scripting that we can use as part of dealing with our database testing, but we need to be thorough about it. We need to remember that when I write a script, I'm making these changes and I need to be able to unmake them or clean up afterwards. And also I need to be, which is really just dealing with databases in general, we need to make sure that we are, particularly with the script, we're affecting or impacting the things only that we want to impact. This is a little bit of really more into database developer DBA kinds of concerns, but like if you delete a record, you don't want to delete all the records in the table. You've got usually a specific record or specific types of records that you want to delete. In database testing, it's the same thing, as we need to be very aware of the impact and the scope of a script or an action that we're taking. As always, thank you for your time, for listening, for the questions, the feedback. If you have any others, as we always do at 2 a.m, you suddenly have that thought that says, "Oh, rats, I wanted to ask this question," you can reach us. You can send us an email at info@developernoir.com. You can put a form entry for the contact us out on developernoir.com. You can always check us out, follow us, tweet us, whatever, at developernoir out on Twitter. And then we do still have a Facebook page, facebook.com/developernoir. We just want to keep working on these things, spending our time, investing time, getting together so that we can make every developer better. Everybody wants to join us, whether it's us or those that we work. We want to make everybody a little bit better. Thanks a lot. So Dave, in particular, because you'd mentioned this, was that a helpful, that was sort of the kind of thing you were hoping to get that sort of a presentation?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, okay. I think it gives me a broader view about what goes into the database, and yeah.
Okay, good. That was like I said, you were sort of the primary customer for that, so I want to make sure that did cover some of the stuff that you were looking to get to.
Yeah, it did. It's a good lesson.
Cool. Are we good for the next one to be 2 weeks? It'll be February the 5th.
Yeah. February what? The 5th?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And I think we get to Michael is doing let's see. Now that we have our handy dandy schedule here. So rest assured, I think, is the next one we've got on our list there.
I was going to ask you, are you going to do, do another series on database testing, like, the approach? Because I know usually as a tester, I end up getting just only the view access.
Yeah, there's We'll probably touch that a little bit. I'm going to get into, and that's not going to come for, and it'll be a few weeks before it starts showing up.
Okay.
There's going to be a YouTube series that will be, it's basically, it's on, really focused on database development.
Okay.
And there's going to be some scripting and some automation and some things like that that will be part of those, that series.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, not sure where else we've actually spent much time in it. So that's probably going to be the first time we go a little deeper into some of those pieces. But that, and I'll mention that as we get closer into that. So probably be the next, or maybe 2 mentor sessions out. It'll probably be about the time that we'll start seeing that.
Okay.
And you're good for doing the rest assured next time, right, Michael? I think you said you were pretty close on that.
Yeah, I should be ready for that. Also, I think if you go back to building the product catalog, I think I had some database examples in there.
I think you did. I think if you go back, building a database, what do we call that? But it's basically that those go way back. Those are out on Vimeo. They're also on, you can probably search I think it was if you go look at like the Become a Better Developer. Oh, here it is, Build a Product.
Yeah, build a product.
Okay. If you go look at that one, then you'll see that we had, is this in? Yeah, there we go. Is that there's a whole series, and it included, I think there was like one testing our application, but I think there was one on testing the database as well. Yeah, so there's a couple that are specifically related to that data. So that may help you as well, David.
By the way, apparently my mic hiccuped during the presentation. I had a quick comment on when you were talking about the timestamp. So one thing to be careful of when dealing with dates and times, especially with databases. So when you store your date into the database, you need to be conscious of, or at least have your requirements as to what date, time, and time zone if you're dealing with US-based dates. Because if you just store the date and then pull the date out and try to display it, if you're in a different time zone, if you're not converting that date properly, the date that you're storing or the date that you're pulling out is not going to match.
Yeah, and that's actually, that's a good point. And that's not just US, that's just any time zone data, is making sure that the conversions as needed are done accordingly. Because you may have, and particularly this goes with cloud computing, you may save your date. You may have 2 different servers that things get saved on. And if there isn't, UTC time or something to tie those stamps together, then it can break some of your, that's one of the relationships, the data integrity issues you have to worry about, is making sure that if I have a timestamp on one record that says that I did it at 9 o'clock today, then the other record should also say that update was done at 9 o'clock today, not at 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock or something like that, which you can run into when you don't have consistent timestamp zones across the data. And more you're seeing that what'll happen is the data will be stored in UTC time, and then the loads will convert data, or the display will convert it to whatever your specific time zone is. So good point. Time is one of those time stamps, dates and times is one of the common data issues that you run into, or confusions you run into.
Yeah, we're dealing with that at work right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely one that we run into on a regular basis. Any other questions, comments, anything else we want to talk about? Going once, going twice. Well, excellent. Then we are basically on time, and we'll wrap this one up, and we'll talk to you guys again in a couple of weeks.